My kid just woke up from his nap, so he's yapping upstairs.
Great.
So I'm sure he'll come down and interrupt us at some point. He likes to grab the microphone. He's almost 2.
Oh my
And
God.
he's adventurous. He's crazy. He's beautiful. He's amazing. And I mean, the amount of time that we're spending right now is just, it's incredible, right? Like we're never going to, is it kind of like an extended maternity leave for you?
I was home. I was back in the office for 1 week, and I tortured myself ahead of that because I was going to miss her so much. And I was away for a week.
Awesome. So we'll get this started. Everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am back. I was on about an hour ago with Dr. Brian Durick, a gastroenterologist down in South Florida. We had a great conversation about how to really fortify your gut health during the pandemic. So we spoke about some really interesting stuff here, and we're going to switch gears, going in a little bit different direction. So everyone who's listening and following us, thanks for joining us. We're going to do something special today. We're going to do a live podcast recording. So typically I do not record these, but Sarah and I go way back, and I said, you know what, let's have some fun today. Sarah, how's it going? Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Adam. I'm so excited to be here. It's our big reunion.
It is a big reunion. It's been, and I did the math. So I started at Sirius in 2006. When did you come on board there?
I think I was right around then. I'm terrible with years and dates, just as an FYI.
I don't even know.
Don't ask me things like that. I know. I always joke, though, that I literally had the lowest job on the totem pole at Sirius. I was the assistant to the facilities department, which is essentially the mailroom, who were the most amazing people on the planet. But I was their administrative assistant there.
Don't sell yourself short. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to fire up, and everyone gets to see a little behind the scenes of how we do it. So normally when I do the podcast, my guest, like Sarah and I, will have like a little quick chat beforehand, and then I hit the old record button, and then I just get into it. So should we just get right into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Everybody, welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today, Sarah Sheehan, is the co-founder and chief customer officer at Bravely, and her diverse background in HR and as a sales leader made her passionate about helping companies build healthy cultures. So relevant today, even more than ever. And prior to Bravely, Sarah was an executive at Gilt City, serving as the head of sales and leading a 65-person sales team. And after spending over a decade in various HR roles at Sirius XM Satellite Radio, where we spent time together, Coach and Gilt Group. So she's been there, done that, and just brings a world of experience. And this background in HR and an intrinsic drive to help others find their potential made Sarah a go-to for professional guidance amongst her friends and colleagues. It's a really cool story. And soon she was coaching strangers who came her way via word of mouth, and recognizing a need, she co-founded Bravely to provide access and support to employees at every level. I'm really interested in pulling back the curtain and understanding how this came to be. And as I mentioned before, we worked together at Sirius XM, as we said, almost 14 years ago. We're old. We're those old people now. We're the old ones.
Babies back then.
We were babies. We were having fun, kicking ass, drinking, and not having to get up in the middle of the night.
So
much. And it's just been amazing to watch her career journey and how much she's done and how far she's come. And I'm so excited to share her story. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Adam. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's do it. So some of my folks may not know you. Hopefully they have, and they certainly will after this. But why don't we bring everyone up to speed? I'd love to hear your story. How did we get from, assisting the traveling secretary of the mailroom to where we are today, where you are an incredible co-founder of an amazing company?
Oh, it's been a long journey, but I truly was like the assistant to the mailroom at Sirius. That's where I started. And I was fortunate enough to develop a relationship with the head of HR at Sirius. It was right before Howard came to Sirius, and he asked me to basically project manage the build out of Howard's studio. I had zero skill set to apply to that, but
so crazy.
I kind of jumped in and was able to make an impression on him. And then that led to more opportunities within that team. And that's where I developed really close relationships with people who have now helped coach and guide me. Sarah Patterson is one of those people, who's now the chief people officer at Compass.
Amazing.
And I launched my career in HR there, and moved around a bit to coach and then Guilt along with Sarah. She sort of like dragged me along with her. But it was at Guilt where I did a complete career switch, like you often are able to do in fast growing startups. It was the hottest thing going in the New York tech scene. And I moved over into a sales role to launch what was their high-end answer to Groupon Guild City, and then evolved into the head of sales there. And it was in that role that I really started to understand the connection between team culture and getting people to talk about what was happening with them to drive performance. Because I had a really lean sales team, I was on the hook for tens of millions of dollars in revenue a year. And the only way for me to personally be successful was to enable my team to be successful. And that's where the foundation for Bravely was built. It's also where I met my co-founder. And this was actually his idea. So I served as this, pseudo coach to him throughout our friendship.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And I want to pause there. I mean, you've had so many amazing pivots in your career, and it's all built on a foundation. And now you could kind of take a look back. And as I always like to say, there's no way I'd be where I am now if it wasn't for, those first jobs, right? Really building up and the twists and turns, whether you like something or not. Like there was always a key learning and a key takeaway, right?
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, when I think back to that first opportunity I had to project manage this insane build out of Howard Stern Studio, the thing that really I think stood out in terms of why I then was able to move on to like bigger roles was that I connected with people in a way that nobody else on the team was connecting. So we had all of these different players, right? We had the building management, we had architects, we had the contractors, we had our own internal team and CEO. And the CEO of Sirius couldn't get the building manager to answer his phone call, but I could get him to answer my phone call.
Was that Mel was in charge back then, right?
Mel.
Yeah, and Scott Greenstein and that whole crew, and then you had Howard and Ross, like everybody. It was a lot of cooks, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. But the one common denominator was that you were able to connect with people on a true human level, and that's just a skill set. That's a combination of experience, practice, and having that DNA. So let's fast forward a little bit, and I want to talk about Bravely, and we were getting to that a few minutes ago, but I wanted to do a reset and talk about the beginning. So talk to us a little bit how you met your co-founder and how Bravely was born.
So Toby and I go way back. He started his career at Guilt as an intern, and I was still working in HR. So he was constantly like coming to like bug me for a full-time role, and we developed a friendship then. And then we ended up, he was an outstanding intern, and so they gave him a role on the Guilt Man team. And then eventually, when we were launching Guild City, we both came together on that team, and he was just always this rock star performer who would, work until, burning the midnight oil, and just was a high contributor. And he was, a lot younger than me, but I learned so much from him. Like we were always at the office late together, and I would make him roll his chair over to help me with my spreadsheets. And we had always this complementary skill set that worked even then and continues to work now. And so he had this idea. He was working actually at a company called Pager, which was an app where you could get urgent care. So I
remember that.
You were sick. Yeah, you'd log on.
I think I even applied there. I think I even interviewed back in the day. Yeah,
you probably did, because they did a great job marketing, probably thanks to Toby. And so he was at work and was on the phone with a friend of his who was having, an issue with her boss. And he had this like spark in his head, like, why isn't there like urgent care for your work problems?
Imagine that.
Right. Like everybody has it. It's a huge issue for each and every one of us at some point in our careers, but there is no place for us to go to get like safe, neutral guidance. We either go to our family, friends.
Right. Someone, no judgment, who's also an expert. It's almost like a shrink for your job, right? Like a career shrink.
Right. Like your work therapist. He said like his dream was to have like a Sarah in your ear at all times, like following you around. He also jokes that we're a SaaS product, Sarah as a service.
That's a good one.
Which could also mean multiple things.
We're not going to go there.
But the idea that you normally go to all these people in your personal life who are well-meaning, but often give us terrible advice or commiserate with us. I'm a lucky person because I have all of these unbelievable people who've worked in HR, and my father's also an employment lawyer, who are constantly guiding me.
I love it.
But most people don't have that luxury.
No, I mean, the average person is not surrounded by mentors like you and I have, or even like a dad, like people that are experts. And you hit on something kind of interesting too, because a lot of people are more commiserating than giving you practical, real advice. And also almost a lot of people won't tell you all those pieces that you need for the self-awareness, right? Let's be real for a moment before we talk about what's going on here.
That's right. And that's actually a key component. So I mentioned that my dad's an employment lawyer. He's a law professor now. He stopped practicing law a long time ago, but he teaches mediation. And in the early days of building Bravely, we talked a lot about like what is going to be like the core of your session experience, right? So when somebody comes to get coached by one of our coaches who we call pros, inside that session DNA is exactly what you're talking about. It's getting people to look outside themselves and take accountability for their part in whatever's
100%.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, I don't do it in an official capacity, and maybe this will be part of my job interview to be a pro coach. But the first thing I start with anybody in their career search, or if they're having issues in their current job, I mean, I'm a recruiter by trade, so I'm a career therapist, is determining if they're able to take accountability for what's good, what's bad, and have a real, true vulnerability and understanding of what's happening around them. Am I good at what I'm doing? Is this problem that I'm having my fault? Did I bring this upon myself? Like really having situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you coach someone through that? Or let's take a step back. If we want to dig into the coaching process a little bit, like are there initial questions to ask to really understand that before you even dig into giving advice and help?
Sure. So anyone, first of all, that's coming to Bravely is getting it offered through their company. So at a baseline, they have access to executive coaching, so to speak. It's even if you're not executive, it's coaching that normally has only been available to, executives at the highest level, which are typically white men. Right. And now everyone at every level has access to something that, is going to help propel them forward. Right. And so when someone comes to us, it could be something benign, like I have to prepare for my performance review and I want help like figuring out how to position like my strengths or my accomplishments. Or it could be I'm having a difficult relationship with a colleague or a boss, or I am a new manager and don't know how to give feedback. Like there's a multitude of reasons that people would come to get coaching. And right now it's all about COVID and I'm stressed and I don't know how to manage anything.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. But, when they come to us, what we're always trying to do is identify like what's the outcome that you're trying to produce? Like what for you would be like the perfect outcome if you could paint the picture? And then what is it that you're absolutely trying to avoid? Like by identifying simply those two things, you clear the path for a deeper conversation around what's preventing you from producing that outcome and what part do you play in it. I think a lot of times, in particular, when we're thinking about relationships, right? If we love to villainize our boss, right? And nobody ever takes a step back to think about what are the pressures that your boss is under? What do you think your boss is going through right now?
Your boss has a boss. Remember that.
Yeah. But simple questions like that, you would be amazed at how many people don't just take a minute to consider like putting themselves in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about the business model. How'd you get your first client? Was it, how do you get your first client? But like, was it an easy sell or like, was it tough?
No, it's nothing is ever easy, Adam. This continues. I mean, we're lucky because right now I think we have, this is a moment for Bravely to shine, right? We're in the middle of this
Super Bowl. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is our Super Bowl. And it's forward-thinking people leaders that can immediately identify that Bravely is an amazing resource for their employees. But early on, the positioning, we launched in the midst of Me Too. So we got clumped into this, this is an app that will help you with like sexual harassment. App?
No.
Yeah. And we were like, no, that's not it.
Pause.
Nope. It at all. Yeah. we could absolutely help somebody figure out how to go forward and have a conversation or weigh their options, but we would never tell someone like, what they should or shouldn't do. So that it was really interesting when we launched that we were right in the middle of that. And we had an article. I'll tell you a story about like the first big client that we were able to land. So TechCrunch wrote an article, and the headline was something around like HR. I'm not going to remember it now, but it was a very negative headline around HR. It's like, you can't trust HR, but this is who you can rely on. And for us, that was like a complete and total disaster, because our buyer is the head of HR people. And what ended up happening is no, it was, we were so excited that TechCrunch had written about us. And then when we actually looked at the piece, it was less than ideal in terms of the positioning. However, we really stood out in the piece because the chief people officer of Zillow Group read it and reached out. And I remember it was late on a Friday night because he was on the West Coast when I had a conversation with him. And I just immediately knew that he was going to become a client because he got it. He had no...
It's those who get it and those who don't. That it's simple as that sometimes. And those are going to be your customers. I feel the same way.
He believes in creating pathways for his employees, and that it's not a one size fits all for everyone, and that people need to have different resources at their fingertips to help them navigate, whatever they're going through at work. And Bravely is just one of those resources that they offer. And so they were one of our biggest clients. We now work with Zillow Group, Autodesk, which is a global company, and we support all of their 10,000 employees, wow. Pinterest, Better Mortgage. So, we're really hitting our stride.
And how does the platform and service work? Is it on demand, like the pricing? I'm just curious, is it like subscription based? Is it price per hour? Like, how do you structure it?
Yeah. So companies buy into Bravely kind of like a typical benefit, right? Like it's an annual contract, you pay a per employee per year fee. That's very palatable, and I don't know if I would say it's affordable, but that's in these times it's dependent on your budget, right? But for what you get, it's extraordinarily affordable,
of course.
And then employees can log on and book themselves for a session whenever they want. It's absolutely on demand. They can get on the phone with someone within a couple of hours and talk about whatever's going on.
That's incredible. And how do you vet the pros? What are the qualifications to be a pro?
Yeah. So early on, it was all my network, right? So we started off with like HR business partners who also had like that high level of EQ, empathy, were able to
experience, like they knew what they were talking about. They could hold their own.
Yeah. And we've now really opened the community up more to certified coaches, who a lot of whom also have worked in HR. So we have a community of people that went through the University of Texas coaching program, and some of them also have full-time jobs, as HR business partners, which to me is like the perfect, like just you understand the workplace dynamics, but you're also a coach and you're doing this work and you don't have to see the person in the hallway.
Exactly.
The next day.
Complete side note there. I mean, the HRBP is not really a talked about position, but it's such like, I always say, like, if I was going to go back to working for a company, I would love to be in that HRBP role, because it really bridges the gap between understanding the business, having the connection to the C-suite and the decision makers, and still having your finger on the pulse from an HR people perspective. It's such an amazing position, and it's a growing position. And I think they're specializing in a lot of, graduate programs as well. And that is, in my opinion, side note, like that's a real hybrid, incredible position that companies should be leaning into, that should be developing further. And if a company does not have that, creating that position within the organization.
Sure. Since my days in HR, right? And so you're in talent acquisition, and back in the day that was just lumped in with
just HR. HR did hiring, yeah.
And what's happened is that HR is really starting to focus more on strategy, like helping business leaders or managers become more effective or drive more productivity or think about like how they develop their team, and less of handling those day to day. They're trying to empower their managers to handle some of those employee relations issues that come up. And that's where we really like supercharge an HR team, because especially now, there is no way that an HR business partner could cover the kind of ground or provide the
time
type
and
of
the
support.
expertise. Plus,
No.
it's the neutrality of it too, because I assume you have like a kind of doctor-patient confidentiality situation going on there, right? Or
yes, it's all confidential,
right? You're not like, part of the agreement is you're not going to report anything back to the employer. Like, you're not going to go
no.
back, and there's a trust factor there.
That's right. I mean, our whole platform is built on this trust and high level of confidentiality between us and the employee, unless they're threatening like some sort of harm to themselves or someone else. But what we do provide to our clients, which is incredibly in terms of why they will continue to work with us, is because we give them insights that a typical survey, for example, is not going to capture. We've identified themes and trends, over short periods of time.
This is real insight. This is real. Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't a survey monkey. Yeah.
No, you just changed the comp plan for your sales team, and now we're getting tons of sessions around, these members of the sales on the sales side saying like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. I don't know how this is going to impact me. You return that back to the business leaders and say, I don't know what you guys just did with your comp plan, but you might want to take a deeper look at how you communicated it and make sure everything's like clear.
This is an incredible resource in so many different angles. I mean, either way you look at it, right? So many different ways you look at it, and it's just adding value. And you could spin it around, and a company could say, hey, listen, this is expensive. But if you look at the ROI on it, you're looking at it from a sales perspective, you're looking at it from a retention perspective and attrition. Right. And there's a hard number to all of those, which completely justify, like it's almost neutral, or even some you could even say is actually creating profit and sales. Right. And I kind of use the analogy. Do you watch the show Billions?
I have, yes.
Chuck Rhodes' wife,
Toby's
right,
obsessed with it. He's like we are her. Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, that's exactly who it is. It's a performance coach. I mean, I absolutely, Sarah, the more I hear about it, like it's freaking awesome. So let's, the one question I kind of want to go back to is like, just quickly touch on that vetting process of your coaches. Is there like a training? Is there a academy to make sure that everyone's kind of in that same talk tracks process, making sure that they're qualified as heck?
So as you can imagine, our pros are our product. They're the center of our universe. They're amazing, by the way. They're on our Slack channel. I feel like they're part of our family, our Bravely family. But we do go through, we make them jump through pretty wide hoops. Is that how you would describe it? To get to the other side, to become a pro. There's a baseline of qualifications that we talked about, like they either have to have deep experience as a human resources business partner, or they have to be certified in coaching. And then we put them through a series of mock sessions to identify that they are not going to be telling people what to do. And this is before we give them like any guidance on what our protocols are for sessions, or, how we want them.
You want to see how they handle it first, right? Their raw approach and talent. Yep.
And honestly, it's actually a pretty easy thing to identify. If somebody's gonna like step on the landmine of telling you what to do, it's pretty easy to position the session, the mock sessions, in order to do that.
So is that the differentiator? You're not someone who's signing up for the service. You're not telling them the move to make. You're enabling them to come to that decision on their own.
Yes. So, like, for example, if you had an issue that you'd raised to your boss and nothing had been done about it, right? And you just weren't sure what to do next, right? You'd come in and we wouldn't say, hey, you need to go to this person. We would start asking questions like, do you feel comfortable going back to your boss and having this conversation? If the answer is no, why? And we would dig deeper into that. And then if they weren't comfortable, then the question would be, who are other leaders that you have relationships with? And honestly, again, it's like people just don't have these thoughts. They come in and you ask one question and it opens their whole world up. And they're like, oh, I didn't even think about this VP that I've already talked about this with. And, they might be able to help me like strategize on the best approach. And then you're off to the races.
No, that's the approach here. Has it gotten like real deep where like people are, really getting into like their personal things where it's like you've prevented somebody from doing something, dangerous to themselves or somebody else?
So in those cases, we absolutely refer them out to other resources. So one of the things we do with all of our clients is we get a deep understanding of everything that they offer to support their teams. And our pros are all trained and they have in front of them, everything that, Zillow Group, for example, we would have all of the other resources that they offer so that we could refer them out. Like we know what our limitations are, and we don't try and like be the hero when we know it's out of scope for us. I would say that right now, and we can talk more about like COVID and the impact that this is having on our business.
We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that in a second. And one piece I kind of want to close the door on, if you're thinking about it from a talent acquisition standpoint, if I'm interviewing at a company and I'm finish line and I'm comparing offers and I'm evaluating the full benefits package, this is what culture is. Culture is not beer on tap and ping pong tables. Culture is when a company cares enough about their employees where they're offering them a neutral third-party service to assist them with any internal issues. This is a huge benefit and a piece of culture. And this is incredible. Kudos to you guys for doing this. This is awesome, Sarah. I love
it. You took the words right out of my mouth. I always say, like, no amount of snacks or yoga is going to help somebody solve their problems.
I don't care about the yoga. Snacks go a long way with me, Sarah.
But if you have a work issue and everyone has had it, right? You become unbelievably stressed. You can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop talking about it. And it impacts every area of your life. And I've never understood why companies don't try and build up their teams in terms of that support so that they can deal with things right away and move forward.
I wish I had this at Vayner. I think maybe if I had something like this during my time at Vayner before I got let go there, that a lot of problems might have been solved early on and it would change the trajectory there. So let's talk about some current events. I mean, literally right now, employees are dealing with things that we've never dealt with before. We have the stress levels of going from potentially a, on-site employee to now remote. And let's call it what it is. This is not normal working from home. There's no way in hell this is normal working from home. This is working from home in the middle of a pandemic. This is working from home with kids that you have to homeschool, shifting schedules. I got my 2-year-old upstairs screaming. I could hear him like a banshee trying to eat right now. This is different. Stress levels are crazy. Figuring out how to transition to remote work. Talk to us a little bit about how, what's the approach to coaching employees on managing stress, working remotely, all this crazy uncharted stuff that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty dark time. For those of us that aren't dealing with health issues related to this, like imagine, I was just reading a Vanity Fair article this morning, this woman saying that, her husband was on a ventilator and he was young. And then in her WhatsApp chat, it was like all these parents talking about not wanting, like how difficult it was to homeschool their kids and, people complaining about working from home. And her husband was unfortunately one of the people impacted by this. So I'm starting to personally know more and more. My partner's sister has it. Like there's more people. He's also had a cousin who passed away from it. So there are serious implications on a personal level from the health side of COVID. And then we are all dealing with our own personal set of circumstances. On my team alone, I worry about the team member that's having their first child and trying to navigate, like, they left New York, but figuring out like, where do I deliver my baby now? My team member who's having to potentially cancel their wedding, my team member who doesn't have family in the metropolitan area and is alone. It's my co-founder, Toby's husband. Yeah. Toby's husband is an emergency room doctor in Manhattan. Like these are crazy circumstances for each one of my
separation, solitude, all these things are so real. And then what about people also, we don't even think about, some people work is their life, right? Like some people their work family is their family. Like some people live alone. Some people don't have significant others. And some people also thrive in that office environment and may not have a physical home setup that's conducive to being productive.
Yeah. It's, I think one of the major shifts that I've seen happening in the sessions that we're conducting is that we've always provided emotional support, but it's at its all-time level right now because everyone is coming to us dealing with stress, dealing with their own set of circumstances. You and I both have kids. I'm a new mom. My 8-year-old stepdaughter is with us. I'm, trying to learn like the new way of math. I'm like, when did this happen? And it feels like I think everyone collectively just feels exhausted right now. There is no like separation between church and state here. We're just going, going, going.
There's no break.
And no, and it's having a real impact on our wellness and frankly our mental health. But I would actually argue for those of us who are trying to stay engaged, like coaching is what we've been hearing. And like this isn't even my opinion, this is what we've been hearing. It is the saving grace right now for a lot of people because they can get on the
100%.
phone with their coach and reset on a weekly basis to get a game plan together for how to stay productive. Because the other thing people are worried about is losing their jobs.
Well, yeah, that's a fear too, right? Like you never know. I mean, my wife's an attorney and they have a weekly, she gets literally an email saying all hands team meeting in 45 minutes and it's panic mode.
Yeah, you're terrified.
But literally all they're doing is making an announcement about something completely benign. And like, you're like, oh, that's it. Right. But your stress level and your heart stops pumping because you hear all team meeting and you know what's going on out in the marketplace. And that's a real stress and a real concern, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're feeling it in my family as well. It's like we're all just waiting for the ball to drop. And that's really hard. And it's one of the reasons that so we've had this core Bravely product for a really long time that is doing unbelievably well with the clients that we serve. But then unfortunately, we've also had clients that have had to make the tough decision to lay employees off during this time. And so we have developed with, you know, a different set of like tenets here around like how to support employees. We've developed what we're calling sort of an alternative to outplacement. So typical outplacement is all about your world, right? Like how do we help people with their resumes and connect them with new opportunities? Well, right now there aren't as many opportunities.
No.
It's not to say there's none, but
they're extremely limited right now.
Yeah, people aren't going out. Yeah. And so not only are they not able to find work, but then they're also going to have to go home and self-isolate, which is, you know, it's a worst case scenario, let's face it. And so we've been able to get a lot of clients and new clients providing this alternative outplacement to their employees that are impacted. And we as a team feel unbelievably privileged to be supporting all of these impacted people.
It's so tough right now, and the job market's only going to get tougher. And I'll call it what it is right now. If we want to talk about it from my angle for a second here, there's so much good talent on the marketplace that if you're A-list talent, you're going to get scooped up first as soon as the floodgates open, as soon as hiring starts happening. But what happens to that C-level talent? I mean, these are human beings, obviously, and it's going to be incredibly stressful for them to deal with they're not going to be in the mindset that they need to be in the career search and that job search, how hard that is, the trials, the tribulations, the rejection, the failure, the waiting, the patience, getting your hopes up. How incredible of an opportunity is this for your company to pivot and add an additional product line there? Servicing.
I mean it when I say it. It's unbelievably humbling because there's so much stress and sadness, even anger. There can be a lot of shame associated with being laid off too.
I'll tell you firsthand, absolutely.
That's something I think that people don't talk enough about. Is just, you know, psychologically what it feels
Stigma.
like. It feels like you're selected, and you know, hopefully most organizations right now. I was asked this question this week about like how should a company, you know, select the people that are laid off, and I was like, well, it's about what they need to move forward, right? Like if they have to cut costs, it's not about the person, it's about the function,
right?
But it doesn't always translate to the employee when they're the ones being impacted. But you know what we're trying to do in terms of supporting employees right now who've been impacted is help them build those resiliency skills, right? So how can they wake up every morning and without their job anymore, build their skills so that when the market does turn, they're ready and well equipped to go out and find the next opportunity. And then also think back over, you know, I'm a perfect example of someone that's pivoted in her life, right? And I'm incredibly privileged again to have had the opportunities that I've had, but I think it's because of the skills that I developed and how I used them.
It's a mindset too. You have that mindset.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've gone deep on with our coaches, is also helping these employees or these people who've been impacted think about, this could be an opportunity for you. What have you wanted to do that you haven't done? And how can you apply the skills that you've, picked up along the way to maybe a new role or new industry?
It's a pivot, and we talk about the pivot a lot in our world, and there's self-imposed pivots, right? When you say, I've had enough of this, I want to try something different. And now it's a pivot that's being brought upon you out of your control. So take advantage of it. So speaking of pivots, 5 months ago, you pivoted into being a mother for the first time, which is incredible. First of all, obviously, it's just magic, right? It's a magical time. Does Bravely work with mothers on maternity leave that might be stressed coming back to work with them on things like, oh my God, I'm leaving my team. Are they going to be okay? Is my job going to be okay? Like, talk a little bit about from that perspective.
Oh God, I love this question. I love this question because it's a hard thing for me to admit, but it's just like anything in life. Like, until you experience it, you can't really speak to it, right?
You don't know.
So when you log on to Bravely, there's a few things for you to select from in terms of categories around what you're going through. And I went through quite a few fertility treatments before I was able to get pregnant with Mabel. And that, for me, it planted this seed because I made the decision to be really open about it. I have a small team. I was going to the doctor like 90 times a week.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
But what I didn't anticipate is what comes along with that is like, then you also have to share the bad news, because it's not always
when things
good news,
do not
right?
work, when you have your hopes up, when things aren't working the right way.
Right. And then being a part of like lots of like different fertility groups, there were so many women talking in those groups around like, I don't know how to tell my boss. And that started sparking for me, like, there's more here that we can support people around in terms of like encouraging them to have conversations. And then when I got pregnant, it was like another layer, like next level of preparing to go out on leave. So I'm a founder of a company, and for all intents and purposes, knock on wood, I have job security, right? Like, I don't think they're going to I didn't think they were going to try and like oust me when I was out on maternity leave. But I started thinking about like, if I was a director of marketing though, in a really competitive environment, and there were other people who were constantly competing with me, and I was about to go on leave, that would be a really daunting thing to face.
It's dark, it's real, it's scary, and it's out there.
And I started talking to more and more women about it. And I found people who had been like their jobs completely changed when they were out on leave, or they came back and they were sharing the role with another person, just banana stories around them being penalized for becoming a mother. And so, long story short, this completely changed my point of view on this. I did a talk on this at Coca-Cola headquarters while I was 8 months pregnant, because it just opened my eyes to all. And the other thing is like, we could talk about what it's like to prepare to go out on leave, what it's like to feel, going through that. But you just have no idea, because if you've never been a parent, you have no idea how this changes your life. No idea.
No, it's that moment. I tell all my guy friends too, because we have a lot of talks about fatherhood. I'm like, that second, that 1 second that's the moment. Your life is not about you anymore. It's about something else, someone else. That 1 millisecond that you never go back. You can never go back to that.
And it's
scared the shit out of them. Don't get me wrong.
I thought I was gonna, I'm one of those crazy work people, right? And I was like, I maybe will take a month off. Maybe. I want to be involved in everything. And I did stay close to Slack and email, but I took the entire 3 months with my baby.
And good for you, because you're never going to have that time back, and that's essential for the baby's health and your mental health too.
And I waited forever. I was 43 when I had Mabel, and I knew that this might be the only chance I had, right? And so I took every second I could, and now I'm more committed than ever. I thought coming back from leave that this would be the thing that I'd be talking about publicly the most. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh yeah.
I had every intention to make this sort of my platform, honestly, because I think it's really difficult for women to go back to work, to be able to afford childcare, to be able, to have flexibility. If there's one piece of advice I could give to companies anywhere, it's that you need to provide women with flexibility, and parents, in particular. Dads are a part of this.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. So let's bring it home here. A series of questions that I like to wrap up each show with, because I love to get perspectives from everybody. Because this show, to me, Sarah, it's my way of learning. I stopped reading business books a long time ago, and I found conversations is the learning for me. That's what works best for me, by listening to people. When you think about the word legacy, when you think about what legacy means to you, how much it's changed since you've been a mother, and how much it's changed since you are a founder. But what does legacy mean to you? And what does your legacy look like?
Great question. You couldn't have sent these to me beforehand, Adam?
No, that's so fun. I like to keep
kidding.
people on their toes here. Yeah.
I think it was Maya Angelou who was the one that says, like, people remember how you made them feel. And my way of operating has always been about connection. And my hope is that whatever legacy I leave behind, and the example that I set for my daughter, is that, how you treat people, how you connect with them. When I go back to Sirius, true story, I was walking down 49th Street the other day and walked up to the window, and the guys working the elevator banks, we ran into each other's arms, right? And they meant more to me than some of the top executives at Sirius did. And we still have that connection. And, the way you treat everyone at every level matters.
1,000,000%. Sarah, what's the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
My grandmother told me once, I'll never forget it. We were in the bathroom. She was putting eyeliner on, and I was obsessing about something. And she said, "Sarah, people don't think about or care about you as much as you think they do."
It's hard for me to think. You're
but
not that important.
Yeah, but it gives me perspective every day to face my fears and go forward.
I absolutely love it. And what would you say to date is your greatest professional accomplishment?
Founding Bravely.
And that was just a softball question.
Yeah, but I mean, I think also, just when I was a little girl, my father was a New Yorker, and I can remember standing on a street corner. I was raised in Florida because that's where my dad went to law school, and we stayed there. And I was standing on a street corner, and I said to him, "Daddy, I'm going to live here one day." And then over time, my dream was not just to live here, but it was to become this executive woman. And I wouldn't describe myself as an executive woman in the way that I think I had imagined it, but I feel like I accomplished a lot of my dreams that I can remember from a very early age.
I love it. I love it, Sarah. This is absolutely incredible. And what would you say is your superpower, right? We're not talking about being able to fly to the top of the Empire State Building, but what is something that you do that not many people out there could do that really makes you so unique and special?
This is a hard one for me because I don't like to. I think
it's okay. This is your time.
I think that people in my life would say that it's about that connection that I provide. It's the support. I can be in a room, honestly, this is my superpower, I think. I can be in a room with a bunch of people around a table, right? I'm in a boardroom, and I can almost tell you what everybody's thinking. I just have that way of knowing, this person feels insecure right now and I need to give them some attention, or this person's completely full of themselves and I need to say something to just level set here. I can read a room really well. But what going back to what I was talking about in my role at Sirius, I became the center of, by the way, they were all men. They were all white men, right? That didn't like each other.
No.
And
no.
And it wasn't just because I was some young girl. They all really respected me. And I was able, through my individual connections and learning how to communicate on a different level with each one of them, I became sort of the glue that held everything together.
No, that's absolutely awesome. And talking about this current time, there's so many silver linings that are coming out of this, so many amazing things. Please give me a professional silver lining and a personal silver lining that you've experienced over the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah. Every day we conduct surveys after every session, and we just get unbelievable testimonials to how we're helping people through this terrible time. And that's the silver lining for me, is that if I hadn't founded Bravely, that there are tens of thousands of people that wouldn't have the support that they get through us right now. And I hate that it's taking a pandemic to shine light on that, but it's unbelievably satisfying as
That's the
founder of this company.
That's the definition of a silver lining. And personally,
obviously spending time with my baby. We left New York over a month ago to come to Michigan, where my brother lives. He's a CEO here. And
I was about to say that's a big New York City apartment you got there.
I know. But it's changed my relationship even with my brother and my mother, who's also here. So my brother's family, unfortunately, isn't here. They were in Florida. And so we're all here. He's here alone with me and my mother and my family. And it's changed our relationship. And I think what's happening for a lot of people is that this moment, the things that might trigger us normally with our family, it's not happening, because we're starting to see that what really matters.
Yeah, 100%. And last but not least, I mean, you've had an amazing career. You've had some ups, you've had some downs. I mean, I fully understand firsthand what it goes through to get pregnant. We've had our situation there. You've had some dark times. You have some amazing times. What do you do, Sarah? What do you look towards to pull yourself up when you're down? And what do you look to as your North Star to show gratitude? Sarah Sheehan, what is your North Star?
Yeah. I am someone who has never struggled with putting myself in other people's shoes. And so anytime I get down and out about my situation, I immediately think about underrepresented or underprivileged people who just, by being born into the circumstances I was born into, I'm just head and shoulders above where most people are in this world. And I just, like, my North Star is just constantly reminding myself that I have been given a lot more privilege than others, and that I need to use it and not complain.
And on that note, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolutely incredible conversation. I can't wait to share it with everybody who did not tune in on our live broadcast today, because I know some people are working and dealing with families and babies and everything. Where can folks find you? Where could they connect with you?
They can go to workbravely.com, WORK, bravely.com. I'm also available via email at Sarah, SARAH, at workbravely.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always open for conversation about anything people related. And then we're giving away free sessions right now. So people can go to workbravely/try it to book a session with one of our coaches.
That is fantastic. Are you hiring coaches right now? Are you open to coaches?
Yes, absolutely. You can go to our website and apply. We're always looking for coaches. We support teams globally, so we have coaches all over the world. So I encourage anyone that's interested to apply.
Sarah, there's a great time for us to reconnect. Let's hopefully continue the synergy. I think there's a lot of opportunities for what I do, what you do. Thank you again so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. You're so great at this. Congratulations on such a great show.
Thank you so much. Awesome. And everyone watching and listening and wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for joining us today. Please join us next week. We bring you more podcasts. To find more, find us on thepodcast.com. You can catch up on past episodes. Remember, wash your hands, look out for each other, take care, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.